You're listening to the Secure Dad Podcast. Discover ways to secure your home, protect your family, and enjoy fatherhood. Now, here's your host, Andy Murphy.
Welcome and thank you for listening to the Secure Dad Podcast. I'm Andy Murphy, the creator of the Secure Dad, which is a resource dedicated to helping families live safer, happier lives. Today is episode number 9, and we're going to talk about fatherhood and what it means to be a protector and a provider. This show is going to be a little different, as it's our first interview. My guest on today's show is Matthew J. Cochran, who is the founder of Tactical Dads. He's going to share with us why fatherhood is so important and what he does to keep his family secure. All that and a little bit more coming up on today's show. As we start the show today, this is podcast number 9. So far, the show has gotten great feedback, and I really want to hear from you. If there's something I can do to make the show better or more accessible, feel free to tell me. And if there's something you don't like, I'm a grown-up, you can tell me. I just ask that you be a grown-up too when you tell me. I'm always available by email at info@thesecuredad.com. Today, my guest is Matthew J. Cochran. He's a former Marine and a man who takes fatherhood seriously. During his time as a children's minister, Matt saw a huge need to engage dads and get them involved in parenting. Because of that, he has founded a very successful Facebook group called Tactical Dads. Plus, he has his own podcast, Mission Fatherhood, and has written several books on faith. Matt's on a mission to help strengthen families by supporting fathers. As usual, I had a great time talking to him, and now here's my conversation with Matt. So Matt, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on.
So before we get started, obviously I know who you are. So let our listeners know who you are and a little bit about Tactical Dads and your mission with fatherhood.
Yeah. So, I'm a dad. I have been for 11 years. I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and I feel like fatherhood is part of my mission, my calling that God's put on my life. I've been an uncle since I was 6 years old. Backstory to that is my mom was older when she had me, so my sisters were teenagers when I was born. And so 6 years old, became an uncle, and then the nieces and nephews just kept coming. So I've always had children in my life. I have volunteered with Sunday schools and Awana programs and all that. And I feel like I was always being prepared to become a father. So once I did, I was like, all right, this is who I'm meant to be. And I never had all these lofty ambitions, like I want to do this and I want to be that. I want to make $1 million. I just always wanted to be a really good dad. So it's one of my main focuses. But I started realizing that I can help other guys along the journey. I became a very broken man after I went through a divorce, and I had a lot of work to do on myself to become a better person and to become a better dad. And so as I was doing that, I started really, really improving myself. And I created a Facebook group for other dads. I called it Tactical Dads because the idea was we are intentional. We're hands-on dads, not people that are on the sidelines. So it just started growing and growing and growing exponentially. I remember one day I looked at it and it had like 700 members, and the day before it had like 400. I wasn't inviting people. I was like, where are these people coming from?
That is awesome.
And I've had other things like Facebook groups where I've tried to invite people and make it grow. I've tried to force it and it just doesn't happen. And this just overnight was growing without my interaction.
Right, and that's how I found you. We're just scrolling through Facebook, and I think it was a suggestion. And the next thing you know, been a member of Tactical Dads, I think, for over a year now,
and a contributing member at that. But as I started seeing that, I was like, okay, I feel like one of the missions God's called me to in this life is to be a help to other dads. So that's what the Facebook group is about. I really enjoy podcasting, and so I thought I would pair the thing that I like to do with the thing that I feel like I have to say. And so my podcasts have primarily been about fatherhood.
Hey man, that is awesome. And again, I've been a part of Tactical Dads, and it has helped me out, and it's made me laugh to see that there are other dads who are dealing with the same stuff that I am dealing with. So that's always appreciated. So pass on some wisdom for me. What I like to do in this show is share a dad hack. Tell me something that you've learned from from being a dad that has changed you in some way? And it can be from something you've noticed or a success or even a failure.
Well, in considering the answer to this question, I think the thing I came up with is I learned to chill out.
Good.
I used to be a yeller.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the way to get my kids to listen was by yelling because, I had tried most of the time on multiple occasions to tell them to do something. And then when they wouldn't do it, I escalated it to where it was yelling and then they would do it. They were compliant because they were scared by my voice. But what I came to learn is that is temporary. You
Mm-hmm.
can get someone to do something out of fear or out of yelling, but they're not really doing it. You're not bringing about any heart change. You can modify someone's behavior, but until you actually transform them to want to do the right thing, you're not really helping anything. So I chilled out a little bit. And this is, again, a side effect, a positive side effect of going through a divorce, where now I have shared custody and I had to do something differently than the way I was doing it before. Because I was like, this is a contributor to why things were going poorly in my home prior to the split. And I said, I'm not going to yell anymore. I'm going to find another way. And I've been more able to coach my kids and guide my kids. We always say, you're not their friend, you're their father.
Right.
But there is a way to not yell and to guide your kids and explain things to them without going pendulum swing fully the other way to where you're just their buddy now.
Right.
You can guide them and lead them and befriend them while still being their father and not their buddy.
That is excellent. I appreciate that. I know a lot of us tend to raise our voice as dads, and it's good to see that somebody else is saying, there's a better way to do it. That is great. And so listening to your podcasts, you personally put an importance on fitness. So how does staying in shape help you as a father?
For me, fitness is about discipline. Mm-hmm. It's about intentionality, and it's about so to give you a little bit of a backstory on why I started doing some stuff to be fitness minded, I found myself not having discipline in any area of my life. I could walk into a gas station to get coffee and I would walk out with a couple of donuts. I could not say no. I could not make myself say no to eating the garbage. And so I was like, wow, I'm never going to be able to just have the discipline I need. Someone got me convinced that the only way I was going to have real discipline in my life was if I started waking up earlier and being intentional about the way I start my day. So I started waking up a good couple hours earlier than I had been before and having a morning routine. And slowly, gradually, I added fitness into that morning routine. It was just praying and journaling and some meditation. And then I started adding a 1 mile walk that I do every day. Part of the point of that is that I make myself do it even when I don't want to. For me, the fitness aspect of it, the being in shape part, is almost a secondary issue. I want to be in shape. My dad did not give me a good example of being physically fit, and he died at the age of 73 from the second heart attack that he had. He was diabetic. He had both knees replaced. I'm making this up as I go along because my dad didn't teach me and lead me in how to take care of myself. So I really try to be intentional about what I tell my kids about what you put into your body. And when we've talked about fitness, it's been from the perspective of me teaching them that I do stuff even when I don't want to do it, like getting up in the morning and going for that 1 mile walk. That may not seem like a lot to some people, 1 mile, I do 5 every day. But that 1 mile walk, the point is not that I'm walking a certain distance. The point is every day, whether I feel like it or not, I'm making myself go walk 1 mile. And I go do that and I come back and the rest of my day goes better. And I've had these discussions with my kids where we talk about not giving up. We talk about sometimes you got to make yourself do stuff that you don't want to do. The best example is my oldest son, who sometimes just doesn't want to go to jiu-jitsu. He's not sick. He's not injured. He just doesn't want to go. And we have that talk and we say, you need to decide to go anyway. And usually when he goes anyway, he comes back like, I'm glad I went. So I'm not just telling him that, I'm exemplifying that for him and saying, I do things before you guys even wake up. And I've told them a bunch of times, I go walk a whole mile before you guys are even awake. And I go in there with the weights, and I'm journaling and praying and meditating and all those things. And then when you guys wake up, I start making your breakfast. But I've done all of that before you, and I'm just giving them an example so they don't have to follow me to a T, but I want them to have some guidance that I didn't really have.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. You mentioned that your son takes jujitsu.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get my son into some sort of sport, and he's, thinking about some stuff. I have studied martial arts in the past. What do you think studying martial arts, does that build up confidence in kids? What kind of positive benefits do you see in that?
It's definitely a confidence builder, but it's also the discipline mindset and the growth mindset. Jiu-jitsu especially, because, you have some sports, kids can get really good at sports and just win all the time. But in jiu-jitsu, you will be tapped out. You will lose. Even the best black belts in jiu-jitsu get tapped out. And so you have to have a growth mindset, knowing that you're learning from getting tapped out. You're not a failure because you got tapped out. You're having a learning experience, and that's been really beneficial for him. He does have ADHD, so it's been really, really helpful. And this is one reason why we signed him up.
Okay.
Having focus. Signed him up because I had heard other people say that their kids with ADHD benefited on having focus and discipline, and I think it's really helped him to be able to do that. Because sometimes, with ADHD, you focus really well on one thing, but then you get distracted. But he's done really well with jiu-jitsu, and I wish my other son wanted to do it, but alas, he does not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's great. I didn't know about the aspect of focus when it comes to studying martial arts like that, and knowing that you are going to lose at some point, and that's awesome. That's not something I had thought of. As a dad, what do you want to see your kids grow up and accomplish?
I really want them, more than anything, I want them to have a relationship with God, because I feel like everything that comes after that, as they walk in obedience with him, I can want specific things for them. So I want them to do this and I want them to be this. But when it really comes down to it, I want them to walk on the path that he has for them, and I'll be happy that they're doing that. But one thing I really want for my kids is I want them to be able to identify their emotions and to be able to adapt to what those emotions are, because I feel like so much of what we do in life, we can default to negative emotions when we don't know how to identify what's going on with us. And so we'll have a lot of anger issues with people that don't know what it is that they're going through, and being able to identify it and talk about it. So they just act out angry. And I want my kids to be able to be like self-sustaining and self-reliant. And I think part of that is having an emotional IQ. And I think that for them to be able to be good citizens in the world, they have to know themselves. So I want them to follow God. I want them to know themselves and be able to adapt to their surroundings and their circumstances.
That's great. My son is starting to ask a lot of questions about faith and church and all that sort of stuff. And last night we were reading in his Bible, and from one dad to another, real quick. When did you know that your kids were receptive to hearing more about God's love?
I think it was when they started asking me questions. And so I've always had this mentality, like, I'm not going to push my kids. I don't want them to resent God. Right. I know a lot of people that left the church because it was forced down their throats.
Yeah.
So I've always said, I'm not going to force it. If they start showing that they're not paying a lot of attention, I'm going to back off. And we used to have these discussions where I would talk about something, from the Bible, and then they would start bringing dinosaurs or Spider-Man into the conversation. I'm like, okay, we're wrapping this up. We're done. But on two separate occasions, both of my when I say my sons, I mean my two biological sons. I do have a stepson, but this was before he was in the picture. The other two boys, at separate times, had started asking me questions about like sin and about heaven And I just really had these deep conversations with them, and never at any point in those conversations did it turn to Spider-Man or dinosaurs. And they were each like 3 and 5 years old, or maybe 5 and 7 or something like that. They're a couple years apart. But whatever the ages were, they were, it was within a couple months of each other, and neither one of them took a cue from the other one. This was separate occasions where I was alone with the boy asking the questions. And I was like, this is spirit-led. This isn't them asking me dumb questions about, Spider-Man in the Bible. This is them actually having deep-seated questions about God that they want to know the answer to. And it was a different age for each kid, but I think that was my cue that they were open to talking about things.
Well, this is the Secure Dad podcast. So I want to talk a little bit about family protection with you. What's one thing that you do to make sure that your family is secure?
Well, I like on your podcast how you talk about situational awareness. That's a huge thing for me. I think just having a mentality of being situationally aware is one thing I do for my family. If we're walking along and I see someone paying a little too much attention to, especially my daughter,
right?
We're walking the other way. We're keeping, there's been a lot of things lately in the news about kids going missing from like Walmart. So when I bring the kids there, it's hard, especially when I have all 4 of them with me, to not let them get separate. But I'm like, we're staying together, all on the same aisle. And that's just how it is. We're not going to split up. But other things I do a lock check every night. I know you've talked about that in your book, going around to and I've missed that sometimes without realizing that I missed it. And my garage door was open all night.
It happens to me.
And I have a son whose bedroom is downstairs. The rest of us are upstairs, but his room is downstairs right by the garage. Someone could have come into the house right next to his room, and that terrifies me.
Yeah.
So I try to always be really good about making sure. Luckily, I live in a good neighborhood. No one came into the garage. The other day, I didn't know this. One of my kids went out to the van and left the van door open all night. My wife noticed it when she came out in the morning. No one stole anything. But that's another one of those things where I'm like, I didn't even think to go check it because I didn't know the kids went into it.
Right.
Grabbed my keys and unlocked it with the clicker, and then they went out there and didn't close it. But I have an EDC bag that I carry around with me.
Good.
My kids have some allergies to different insect bites, so I carry Benadryl, EpiPen, some things like that just in case. Always have Band-Aids, ice pack, things like that. And yeah, just keeping an eye on my kids. I think a lot of people don't think about stuff.
Right.
They just live. They just, well, I think you and I probably would both identify ourselves as sheepdogs. A lot of people are just sheep.
Right.
And it's no fault of their own. They just don't think about the possibilities that could happen.
Right.
Don't have a situational awareness, and they don't keep an eye on their kids. They just trust. But this is not the time when we grew up, when our parents could just let us run around.
Right. For those of you who are listening who may not be familiar with the phrase sheepdog, this really came out in the movie American Sniper. At the very beginning, they discussed this, that there are 3 kinds of people in the world. There are wolves, that are the bad guys. There are sheep, which are the average everyday citizen. And then there's the sheepdog, and that is the person who wants to protect the sheep and keep the wolves at bay. Having a secure family can mean a lot of different things. As we wrap up, tell me what you think makes up a secure family.
So I think that, I want my wife and kids to feel safe, but I think that having a secure family doesn't necessarily mean that they feel safe because of what I do to protect them while they live obliviously. I think it means that they're aware and capable if I'm not around. I think helping my family to be capable of protecting themselves in age-appropriate ways, of course, is
absolutely
teaching them situational awareness. I think that's truly what it means to have a secure family, because if I just protect my family and never teach them how to be independent, then when my kids grow up and they go off on their own, they're not going to know how to protect themselves because I always just did it for them.
Right.
So I want them to feel safe, but I also want them to be aware. And there was a podcast I was listening to earlier, The Daily Stoic, where he was talking about not dwelling on the things that could possibly happen and worrying about them, but being aware of the situations that could happen and being prepared for them.
Right.
So I always want to be prepared, and I want my kids to know why I'm prepared and how I'm prepared, and I want them to understand how they can be prepared.
Yeah, and that's great. There's a lot to understanding that something that go wrong and being prepared for it. And I tell people a lot, if you have a secure mindset, if you have a mindset where you're prepared to take care of something, you can free up your brain to relax and enjoy life.
Yeah. Yeah. And people ask me sometimes, I always have everything with me. I've been called MacGyver. I've been called a Boy Scout. People be like, wow, you have a flashlight in your pocket. Why do you have a flashlight in your pocket? And I'm like, you just needed it, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
You just asked me if I had a flashlight, and I had one in my pocket. So why are you complaining that I was carrying one? You needed it and I had it. But I think that people think that if you're like prepared like that you're worried about all the possible scenarios that can happen. I'm like, no, I'm not worried because I'm prepared for it.
Right. Exactly.
Or when people say, oh, you must be paranoid because you carry a gun. And I go, no, I'm not paranoid because I carry a gun.
Right. Yeah,
I'm not worried that somebody's going to attack me because I have it. It's not that they're getting the cause and effect backwards. Oh, you must be worried and therefore you have a gun. I'm like, no, I'm not worried because I have it.
Right. Exactly. Experience and training and mental preparedness is going to help you out when you absolutely need it the most. It's ready to go, but it is not consuming your life.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. So if people want to find out more about you, your podcasts, your group, your books, where can they find you?
The best thing you need to remember is Matthew J. Cochran, all one word.
Yep.
And it's Matthew with 2 T's. It's my Instagram handle. It's my Twitter handle. And it's how you can find me on Facebook. There are pages for the Tactical Dad stuff, but I don't update them as much as I do my personal stuff. So I would say follow my personal stuff and you will find links to the other stuff from there.
Excellent, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with the Secure Dad and all the listeners on the podcast. I really appreciate the insights that you have brought up about fatherhood and being intentional and being secure. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
That's all we have for the Secure Dad podcast today. I'd like to thank Matt Cochran for being on the show. If you'd like to hear more from Matt, you can check him out at the Tactical Dads Facebook group and visit his website, MatthewJCochran.com. I'll also have the link to all this stuff in today's show notes. You can find them at thesecuredad.com/podcast. I'm working on more interviews that I feel are relevant to family security and fatherhood. I'm Andy Murphy, and until next time, take care and be secure.
You've been listening to the Secure Dad Podcast. For 24/7 information on home security and family safety, check out thesecuredad.com.